Hi, Pradeep.
Hi.
Is it starting now?
Yeah.
Should we start?
Yes, I am fine.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. Sanjay ji? Good afternoon, all of you. Myself, Sudarshan Kedia from Resurgent India Limited. I'm been looking after stress asset resolution group. Allow me to brief you about Resurgent India. Resurgent India, it's a SEBI registered category 1 merchant banker. Basically, we assist corporates in raising funds from banks and NBFCs. We added few verticals down the line, wherein we do conduct TV study also. We do train bankers as well as public sector undertaking employees on various customized programs. We do have private equity and merger acquisition division. We are into government advisory also. Therein, we being empaneled with NHI and Indian Port Trust and other bodies. As we are SEBI registered category 1 merchant banker, we assist companies in valuation of financial assets like equity shares, preference shares from valuation point of view. Recently, we have floated a new SPV wherein we being providing services in the form of valuation of fixed assets, wherein the valuers are being registered with IBBI. So there are basically 3 category of valuers: land and building, plant and machinery, and financial assets. 2 years back, we have floated an SPV which has taken the shape of an IPE. Therein, we do have 16 partners, wherein 14 partners are insolvency professionals. And we started categorizing the IBC area also. Now, we are going to start a webinar. The subject matter of that webinar is how ARCs shall resolve stress assets. The basic agenda which we are going to cover under this webinar: what is the market expectation from ARC, how well ARCs are placed to be a significant player in resolution of new stressed accounts, what would be the role of existing management in revival of stressed accounts with ARCs, and what role financial advisors can play in resolution of stress assets in coordination with ARCs. Now let me introduce our eminent speakers to all the attendees. Please welcome Shri Sanjay Tribriwala, CEO of Phoenix ARC. Shri Sanjay Tribriwala is a chartered accountant, cost accountant, and company secretary with more than 20 years of post-qualification experience in manufacturing, banking, and financial services. Prior to Phoenix ARC, he has also worked with Kotak Group, Edelweiss Group, Thomas Group, and Deutsche Group. He is also a managing committee member of ARC Association. Let me give you a brief profile of Phoenix ARC also. Phoenix ARC Private Limited is sponsored by the Kotak Mahindra Group, a leading diversified financial services group, to undertake the business of asset reconstruction. Kotak Mahindra Group owns 49.90% of the equity capital of the Phoenix, and the balance is being held by a diverse group of investors. As on March 19, Phoenix has AUM of 7,891 crore. CRISIL, a leading rating agency in India, has assigned AA rating to Phoenix ARC, which signifies high credit quality and is the highest in asset reconstruction company. Let me welcome our next eminent speaker, Mr. Sri Pradeep Goyal, who is the Chairman and Managing Director, Prudent ARC. Sri Pradeep Goyal has a vast work experience of 27 years as an industrialist entrepreneur in the field of iron and steel. During all these years, he has been actively involved in establishment of business such as power project, thermal, hydro, and solar, and pharmaceutical engineering, ship breaking, real estate, and so on. He is co-chairman of ASSOCHAM, National Council for ARCs, and vice chairman of ARC Association. Let me give you a brief profile about the Prudent ARC. Prudent ARC Limited is an upcoming asset reconstruction company having its registered office in Delhi, and it has been certified by RBI on 3rd of August 2016 for commencement of business. He has extensive knowledge in the area of credit, international banking, treasury, investment banking, and stressed asset management, with a specialized exposure in infrastructure financing. He was Chief General Manager at State Bank of India, catering to the credit requirement of large corporate borrowers, handling a credit portfolio of about 2 lakh crore. He also contributed in resolution of bank stress asset under the IBC code. Shri Avinash Kulkarni is an CEO of the ARC. Let me brief you about the India Resurgence ARC Private Limited. India Resurgence ARC Private Limited, it's a 50-50 joint venture between Piramal Enterprises Limited and a Brain Capital Credit. So welcoming all the attendees as well as eminent speakers for joining us. And now would like to request each of our eminent speakers to give us a brief about their organization as well as their themselves, so that we can start the session accordingly. Whatever I have left out, if you can brief out.
Should I go first? Thanks, Sudarshan. Thanks, Sudarshan, for inviting us for the panel, and also I would like to say that the points that you have chosen are pretty interesting. So I'm hoping that we will have a nice, fruitful discussion today. As far as me and Phoenix is concerned, I think you have covered a lot of stuff, but a quick intro. Yes, Phoenix is one of the earlier lot of ARCs, having started business in 2008, and is also a part of Kotak Mahindra Bank, which was a pioneer in asset reconstruction, having started doing this business from 1998 onwards. I have been associated with the ARC right from the start, earlier as a chief financial officer, and for the last 2 years as a chief executive officer. And I have seen the business change completely in the last 10 years Earlier, when in 2008-9, we used to buy small accounts on cash basis, to then the 595 SR deal model, changing to 1585 model, and now again back to more or less full cash kind of a business. So we have actually come one full cycle on the business side. And if I put it in a different way, we have come one full cycle from an economic perspective also. Since I've been in the asset reconstruction business, 2008, there was a global financial crisis, and there were a lot of bad things which happened at that point of time. And now 2020, again, we are at the same stage, except that it seems like the situation might be slightly or maybe even more worse off than what it was in 2000. That's all from my side.
Yeah. Pradeep ji, you can.
Yeah. Thank you, Sudarshan and Resurgent Group for inviting me, and good afternoon to all the attendees and the panelists here. और अभी जो latest trend है वो हो गया नमस्कार का, तो नमस्कार to everybody. It is a pleasant way to meet everybody. At least this way we can interact and meet our friends and associates from every field, which we miss to do a lot these days, being locked down. About Prudent ARC, we are a family-owned company. Prudent ARC is owned by me and my family. And as Sudarshan has already said, that I come from an entrepreneurship and an industries background. So that is a totally different and a unique skill set that my ARC has. While I'm not a professional, but I have my team of professionals who are ex-bankers, chartered accountants, lawyers, and we have formed a pretty team in the last 3.5 years that we have been existing. And all this while, with our conservative approach, our acquisitions have been really fair and good, wherein we have achieved about 98% success. We are looking at all small retail accounts, not yet retail, but small accounts, corporate ones, medium and small enterprises, right up to the bigger ones. At this moment, we are passing through, as I don't want to repeat what Sanjay just said about the phases that ARC had, and he beautifully articulated words and how these phases move from one to another. Now, after COVID, it will be interesting to see what is the new phase that we have in front of us. If Sanjay, if Sudarshan, I may be allowed to just elaborate on the subject also.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, post-COVID era is going to be a very interesting era to the extent of the changing environment for ARCs. I personally feel a lot of NPAs now arising out of the micro, small, and medium enterprises, and that could result into huge numbers. And I'm also equally worried about mudra loans and medium and even larger enterprises. What I feel is that losses will amount to at least 3 months of fixed costs. It will amount to 3 months of income that is earned by everybody, and what impact it is going to have on the income tax collections and the GST collections. And overall, it will have a rippling effect in our overall economy. And I think that is going to make our economy situation very bad, and ARC's role is going to be key in revival and rehabilitation in this scenario. So over to you, Avinash, I think.
Thanks, Sudarshan, and good afternoon to all the participants. Pleasure to be with you today. Hope all of you are well and keep well. Take care of yourself well, and we'll come back to normalcy soon. So, just to give a brief introduction about my ARC, this is India Resurgence ARC Private Limited. It's a joint venture, as Sudarshan mentioned, between Bain Capital and Piramal. Bain is one of the largest distressed investors all over the world, and Piramal, of course, is a large corporate from within the country. So the idea for Bain to set up this venture and for Piramal to take this forward is to blend the global expertise in handling the stress in the most localized manner, and bring the solutions which work locally and not necessarily, or some of the foreign solutions will have to be tweaked to suit the local environment. So our basic focus is on, our approach is very fundamental driven approach. So we look for good businesses, fundamentally good businesses, with some sort of issues in terms of regulation or balance sheets, etc. Good businesses, bad balance sheets. And most of the time when we invest, our approach to managing the risk is hands-on. So we get involved in many of the activities which Kathleen does. We generally aim to do large size transactions because we get ourselves involved to a very detailed extent. So generally we look for large ticket size and try to provide a very flexible solution, the lenders as also the promoter. So this in brief what we do. We have so far done a couple of transactions. Our ARC is one of the new generation ARCs. We are just 1 year old so far, slightly more than a year now. And we have AUM around 1,000 crores now. And we have done 2 transactions so far in this ARC. So look forward to many exciting times coming in this country, hopefully in a different framework or a different type of opportunity. But looking forward to interact with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So would like to request all the attendees, if they do have any queries, so please post it in Q&A section so that we can get it addressed at the end of this session. So to start with, Avinash ji, over to you. Would like to ascertain how is the likely scenario for stress assets account post COVID-19. So what's your thought process, whether how this stress assets market is going to be flooded with stress asset proposals after this COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, so general consensus, I think almost everywhere, all over the world, people do believe that post-COVID, a lot of businesses will be impacted substantially. And therefore, for this type of a market where people are looking to invest in distress, obviously the size is going to be much larger. The challenge here in actually predicting or taking a bet on terms of how the scenario will pan out, it's a slightly risky call, because this is not an event which has ever happened in anybody's lifetime so far. It is once in a century type of an event where everything across the world has come across, to a standstill. Also, when the recovery happens, it may or may not be a very secular sort of a recovery. Some areas, some businesses will be more impacted. It could be some states could be more impacted. Some of the businesses could be more impacted. In the same region, some businesses will do, some will not will do well. So probably it's going to be a very, very different ball game after the COVID is over. The way people are working can change. Always we have so far in our life, we always thought of, recession means pumping in money and reviving the economy. So basically we always talked about demand side recessions. Hardly anybody in India has ever spoken about supply side issues. So now post-COVID, logistics, labor, all these things will gradually be difficult to come by very quickly and very soon. So that type of a challenge is very different than what we have faced so far. And probably one thing I think all of us would definitely agree is there's going to be a substantial improvement. Like Pradeep briefly mentioned, the smaller businesses are likely to be more impacted. Larger are also likely to be impacted. So how far and what type of support they need will also be different. So far, we always pumped in some money and did some sort of a tweaking in the business model, or put up some sales people in the businesses, probably the sales improved. But now it will require a better understanding of the business. Whoever has got work experience, whoever has worked in this type of situations, whoever knows the industry well, whoever knows the very details of industry, intricacies of industries well, they will do well, in my view, compared to all complete straightforward financial solutions which we are looking at this point in time. By the thumb rule or by the back of the envelope or by the general consensus what people are talking, some of the industries like hospitality, airlines, travel, these are likely to be taking longer time to come back. Whereas some of the industries, pharma, hospitals, these type of industries are more expected to come back sooner on track. Some of the industries will be completely different business model. Just to give an example, construction, which was already real estate and construction, which was already going down, they will be substantially impacted here. Even commercial properties, which used to have very good yield. Going forward, if people form this habit of working from home, even that can come down substantially. So there are a lot of things that can happen. Very difficult to predict. We can only have opinions on various aspects, and whatever our niche area of operation, we should target that to take it forward. That is how I would look at it.
Sanjay ji, you would like to add something?
So to a huge extent, I agree with what Avinash says that, there is going to be major upheaval. But in my view, this upheaval, while it's going to be major, but we might not see, or actually what we will see is a much more prolonged recovery, because recovery is going to take a huge amount of time. Typical recession solution is to pump money, like Avinash said, but it doesn't seem like our government currently has any intentions of pumping a lot of money or taking some leeway on fiscal deficit and trying to kickstart the economy. So that is going to result in substantial delays. And even if, say, the lockdown runs for 3 months, but for the industry to come back on its feet, I think it will be another 6 to 9 months is what will go. Because it will not be possible for the industry to start on day one with full capacity. And even if, so example, some of our customers whom we talk to, they are in zones where they have been allowed to start industries by the local authorities, but they don't want to start for the primary reason that raw materials is a problem, finished goods is a problem, trying to transportation is a problem. So the whole wheel of Indian economy, which has come to a nice grinding halt, will take much longer to kickstart and work on. And the change of business model for various industries or certain types of businesses might just cease to exist. For example, what I'm reading about various IT companies saying that they are targeting to move 50-60% of their teams to work from home. I mean, then why would I need a 50,000 square foot office with 500 seating spaces? Maybe next time I will just cut down the lease and go for a 25,000 or 20,000 square feet office. So that could be a very big implications on the Indian economy and specific sectors also.
Very true, very true. Pradeep ji, your views about it?
Yeah, while I agree and I support totally views of Avinash and Sanjay, who just mentioned about different aspects, to add to all this, what they've said, I would say that there is a very important role of government policies going forward. We are not a rich country, we are a developing country, and our government does not have enough resources, monetary-wise, to support as desired in today's times. So the best thing the government can do is to have sufficient policies in place to support businesses, services sector, all sectors, at least so that they can maintain the employment levels. Having a normal employment level in our common man is affected more by employment. So if the employment and the employee get salaries, so the economy, circulation, and the vicious circle, as we call it, will be maintained. Otherwise, what is happening is today, the vicious circle of economy is broken. When we say vicious circle, it is demand-supply gap. Demand generates, spends money, creates demand for the further product, then supply. So the chain is broken because of all this situation. So how I analyze this is that first we need, after coming back from COVID, I don't see that in one day we can come back from COVID. So coming back totally out of COVID will take a few months. And in that few months, what can we do to start? How can we stable our operations? How can we have a capacity utilization to the break-even levels? Then we start thinking of the profitability, minimum profitability. Then we talk of normal profitability that existed in the pre-COVID times. So based on my individual thinking and assumptions, I think we are headed for at least 24 to 36 month cycle in which we will be able to achieve a pre-COVID situation of normalcy. And as I already said, I would like to say it again that I would request government with folded hands to come forward with open mind to support all sectors of Indian industry, services, MSMEs, businessmen to start and try to revive Indian economy.
Pradeep, over to you. How this ability of funds to tap the NPA market plays a very important role for ARCs. So how you're going to cope up with this situation right now? Because as a huge market is being, we can see huge market there before us post COVID-19. So how we are going to tap this market? How we going to assess this market?
See, when I talk of prudent individually, we are
Yeah.
coming with our AIF, which we have recently launched. So we'll be raising funds in that. We'll be pumping in more of promoters funds in our ARC. And we are talking to a lot of international funds, domestic funds, and people interested in the investments of ARC sectors within the given regulatory norms and laws. At the same time, there is another thinking that I have is that whatever we buy, there has to be further buyer of what are we selling. So unless we buy, for example, if we buy an asset for 50 cents to a dollar, we are able to sell at 51 cents. What is the point of buying even at 50? Right now, what I see is that buying and selling is not as important as the revival would be. And revival would totally depend on a lot of policies and demand supply chain that is maintained going forward. So we have to be very cautious, not putting in or pumping in money blindly, but in a careful way so that we don't lose our money and we are able to revive while saving our capital and getting sufficient returns for our investors.
Okay, so it's all about rationalizing the amount of investment which ARC is going to do in the near future. It's all about rationalizing.
I would say that about rationalizing and also about rationalizing. It is about to careful step towards saving the capital even.
Okay.
This situation is so bad that nobody can predict what is going to happen tomorrow. So saving the capital. Second is rationale of investment to the extent of the IRRs that we can maintain. That is the way I would think.
Sanjay ji, your views?
So see, from a capital perspective, capital raising is a continuous process. I mean, the day I need money, I don't know whether money is available or not available. So one has to keep on raising money as and when it's available. And obviously, there are various options which are there. So like example, there's an equity, you can raise debt from market. Yeah, there are challenges around it because a lot of banks or mutual funds don't want to lend to ARCs. But nevertheless, there are people who do it. And the third option is obviously raising a fund tends to be costly because the returns that you're offering them is much higher. But it also offers the advantage that there is no fixed repayment liability like a debt raised on the balance sheet. So capital is going to be a constraint. And when I look at a total debt NPA number of 10-12 lakh crores of the banking system, can we say that all of those debt is something which a ARC can buy or is acquirable by an ARC? The answer most probably is no for that, because for an ARC to buy the debt, like Pradeep just said, is I need to have an exit strategy. I cannot put 100 crores to buy a debt without having a clear exit as to how I will collect that 100 crores plus my expected rate of returns, which can be through either the running of the factory, running of the unit, or through sale of the underlying asset or whatever. So the any way it makes sense is to buy an asset if it is available at the right price, and it should meet the credit norm. It should be credit worthy. It should make sense to us from a credit perspective to buy the asset, so that if I'm buying an asset for 100, I am able to collect it with my expected returns.
That's true. Avinashi, your views about it, sir?
Yeah, so I think as far as funding is concerned, both the panelists mentioned the similar things in a sense that the funding could be available. AIF is an option. One thing which you need to look at it is in terms of cost of funding. Like suppose earlier banks used to give line of credits to ARCs, so that was easier. ARCs were prepared to raise bonds on the market, so the cost of capital was cheaper. Now in this market or going forward at least for 6 to 12 months, when debt mutual funds are themselves struggling, it is going to be an extremely difficult proposition for ARCs to raise money domestically. So the source of funding more likely is expected to be from outside. As Pradeep mentioned, this is AIF structure. Like our ARC is also ARC structure. We are a vehicle of AIF. And most of the companies with most of the new ARCs are coming are more or less following that structure. So their source of funding is going to be AIF. AIF investors are going to be foreign investors, and foreign investors' expectations on returns are likely to be much higher. And if the expectation on return is higher, obviously the prices at which ARCs buy loans from the banks is going to be lower. And how far that gap between banks' expectations and ARC's expectations, ARC's pricing is matched, that only time will tell. But so far, it has always been wide, and so far, therefore, notwithstanding the large size of market which you described, it is very unlikely that ARCs will be suddenly growing in multiple fold. I don't expect that to happen. One more aspect you have to keep in mind in ARC's functioning, like exit, which was mentioned. Exit through IBC probably will substantially slow down, because the one is the process itself is going to be slowing. Second is people like us won't like to go to IBC unless we are reasonably sure that there is a buyer available. Now, when most of the business struggling to manage their own cash flows for daily requirements, it is very likely that somebody is going to do inorganic type of a growth and buy my company. So therefore, the recourse to IBC probably will come down from the matured good investor. Some of the procedural things when RBI lays down to take any corporate to the IBC, it will happen. But matured investor would not prefer to go to IBC very easily, at least for next 6 to 9 months. So these are some of the things that, in my view, can happen going forward.
So, Avinash, how you are looking forward this suspension of IBC, the dragging of these companies into IBC, which has been suspended by IBBI. So, what's your outlook into it? How the resolution of assets will come out in next 6 to 9 months, wherein new companies cannot be dragged to NCLT?
I don't know whether that is final order has come, but I think it will be applicable for prospective companies, whichever companies being taken to IBC, that only it will be impacting. The old cases will continue to be taken up. Now, point is how long they are going to suspend it. If it is for 3 months or something, in my personal view, it doesn't make any change, because in any case, IBC cases are not getting admitted for 3 months in any case. So any which ways it was getting delayed. And our IBC currently has so much of backlog that even if this time is utilized for clearing the old cases, it's a great service to the nation. So I think if that way, also if we are able to clear the backlog in IBC and bring it up to date, probably it's a good thing to have. Now, another part about it is the whole idea of this moratorium is to give breathing time to the promoter. If, like earlier we mentioned, the recovery is quick, and then probably it helps promoter. If recovery is very slow, then it is likely to not very effectively help promoter, because any which way is not going to get funding from anywhere. Banks are unlikely to be very, generous in giving credit lines to the borrowers. So will the company actually turn around very quickly? No, because now I think we did mention about the slow recovery. So earlier we used to call it V recovery and U recovery. Now people are talking of L-shaped recovery. So basically that means no recovery for quite some time. So Mr. Pradeep has very rightly mentioned that it will take about minimum 24 months to businesses to come back to their earlier levels. And I think there's general consensus to that number. So with all this IBC suspension and resolution, I am also not pretty sure about how many cases IBC could have resolved even if they were admitted in this type of manner. So it's a good thing to do from the government's perspective, but from other market participants' perspective, I don't think many people will be much bothered about it.
Sanjay ji, over to you. You would like to ascertain how you see this COVID-19 situation in terms of resolution applicant who has already submitted their resolution plan and being approved by the COC, but now resolution applicant are coming forward to renegotiate their resolution plan. So in this type of situation, what's your outlook?
So So you're right. There are a lot of resolution applicants whose plans have got approved and they now want to back off from those plans or at least try and renegotiate the deal to a more downward number. But the way I look at some of these plans or some of these thought process is that, you know, there is a commitment which you gave at an X point of time. And you know, a commitment is a commitment, and I don't see that there should be too much reasons to allow resolution applicants to actually back off. Because while we all agree that yes, there is going to be a COVID impact anywhere between 3 months to maybe as worse as 24 months. But then when a resolution applicant is looking at a business or looking at a company, he is taking a long-term view there, hopefully planning to run the company for the next 10, 15, 20 years. There is sizable and enough and more asset value because of which the price paid has been determined. So in such a situation, allowing a contractual leeway to get out is not fair on the seller also, because the seller or the banks have wasted or spent enough and more time on running the whole process and finally zeroed in on a guy after negotiations, after doing everything. And now if the resolution applicant backs off, you are back to square one on the whole process, because now we'll have to again start from square one, and we don't know what will happen going forward. So a contractual commitment is a commitment which I think the resolution applicant should honor. Maybe yes, it could mean that there is a 5-10% hit which they are looking at taking over a longer period of time. But I don't think if you're looking at a 5-10 year period, the impact should be much more than that. The impact would be, yes, if I have a very short-term plan that today I was hoping to buy the company for 100 crores and in 6 months time flip it for 200 crores. Yeah, you're right. That is not likely to happen in any case now because of the change scenario. But then if that was a short-term view, then obviously what can be said about it?
Very true. So Pradeep ji, your views about it, sir?
Yeah, my view is that I would like to take IBC was launched with the aim of maximizing the realization within the minimum possible time. That was our basic motto for IBC. In the new scenario of COVID, I would expect, you know, I would not like to speculate what government is trying to do, whether they're trying to have a deferment of 6 months or 12 months. But my wish list would be as follows, that at least 24 months, no new cases to be admitted. And the current cases, admitted banks oblique, the creditor should get one-time option to withdraw with 2/3 of majority, so that they can really decide on whether they would like to continue with the process or they want to take another course. Next point of wish list could be in the 29A, an amendment could be done wherein only willful defaulters and fraud cases, promoters are not allowed to participate in the plan. Otherwise, there are so many of them and so many more will be added who are genuine promoters with genuine business intent, having a genuine business loss. They should be allowed a second chance. They should not be thrown out of their businesses. So this is a simple wish list, which I would like to say, in addition to what Avinash and Sanjay just said, that if, and as I already said, government policies need to be changed to the needed times.
So Pradeep ji, what is your expectation as an ARC? What's your expectation from the ecosystem so that the ecosystem can assist you in resolution of stress assets? So what's your expectation towards the ecosystem?
One thing I've already mentioned about the IBC, so I not repeat them in words, but I would like to reiterate my comments on IBC. Secondly, I would like my wish list would include changes in the RBI guidelines to the extent of provisioning of SRs, which changed on 1st September 2016, and thereafter there was no incentive for banks to sell, and banks were discouraged to sell on SR basis. And as a result, there is a lot more requirement of cash component that has to be put in through ARC. Having said that, we all understand that if ARC is putting in more money, the risk is higher. If it is 100%, the risk is 100% ARC. So the idea is the person who's taking more risk at a higher cost of capital, he's looking for a different IRR than which should have been possible in a SR combination model. So having that system back in place would help government to revive businesses more, and also banks recover more money, and people come back on track in their real life and real businesses. So these are the most important factors which I think would help in reviving the whole situation.
Over to you, Avinashji. What's your view about it?
I think that's very right in terms of see if you like Sanjay mentioned, if NPAs are going to be the tune of 10 to 12 lakh crores, nobody is going to bring that much money from somewhere. Now, only because RBI tells you to make provision, you will only do cash. That type of approach is slightly a bit of a too much of conservative coming there. So one part, I think a standing demand, which I think ARC is also now making now, is about this provisioning of RBI. And second one is the way business are done by the bank, following all sorts of CVC and CBI guidelines and all. That type of thing puts off many of the investors because they give no access to any of the asset to do any type of a diligence. It's a pure enforcement that most of the investors would do. So therefore, there has to be these banks will have to be allowed to do bilateral transactions. Otherwise, it is very, very difficult. It's one thing to say that there is no transparency and one, but second is wherever there is a transparency, one must realize and one must admit that transparency has a cost. So obviously somebody will have to pay that cost, and even the seller only will pay the cost because it is a choice for the buyer either to buy or not. But bankers quite often don't have that choice. So there are few things from RBI which will be required. From government side, of course, more only way to come back is spending money. So they have to spend much more money in whichever way they can, wherever they can give grants, wherever they can start infra projects, wherever they can enhance the number of projects which are being undertaken right now. And fortunately for a country like ours, there's a huge scope for development infrastructure. So I think that way, if they start spending much more money in all sorts of areas, then probably that could also help government businesses to come back slightly fast.
Sanjay ji, your views?
So one of my views is, I think that that is suspension of IBC is a very right thing to do. In fact, it should be suspended for a long period of time. Is because, I mean, whatever my discussions has been with the lender community, with other ARCs, IBC has not been very successful. If you cut out a few very large cases, other than that, the recovery rates have been very low. It has been mired in bureaucracy and legal cases for small things. Everybody has an option of going to the court and trying to fight it out. Even if you look at the first lot of the dirty dozen cases, only some 4 or 5 of them still got sorted out. Balance are still pending. Yes, there are 2 flagship there, Bhushan and SR, but that's the end of it. What about the others? I mean, there are more than 1,500 cases in IBC. So if I can make a radical suggestion, I think there should be a stop on IBC for a few years. India doesn't really need a law where you are forcing things on a time-bound manner, but the courts don't respect the time-bound manner in any way whatsoever. And so then the time-bound is only for the financial creditors who actually are forced to select one of the 4 guys who have come in the bidding process, and all of them are equally low in their bids. Other than that, for helping the ARC industry or helping resolving the NPAs, one of the important things that is needed is that the list of qualified buyers who can subscribe to SRs, if that list is extended. So currently only banks, FIIs, certain NBFCs are the ones, and some AIFs can subscribe. Why shouldn't individuals be allowed to subscribe? If RBI is worried about small retail investors, it can put some kind of amount threshold that only HNIs can subscribe money, HNIs can subscribe to SRs. But that will actually open a floodgate of money for the ARC industry. There are a lot of investors or potential investors who talk to us who want to invest in distress because they like the model or they feel that there is a very favorable risk reward ratio here. But as an individual, they can't invest unless they have an NBFC which meets RBI criteria. So I think that is one very important thing which RBI should do. And yes, we have been lobbying for it for quite some time, but somehow that has not been there on the agenda of the regulator.
So Sanjay ji, over to you only. What
Yeah.
would be the role of existing management in revival of stressed account with ARC? So how we are coordinating with the management, and
So our inherent philosophy is that first chance should be given to the existing management to run the unit and turn it around, provided that they are not willful defaulters or in any manner. So whenever we look at buying an account, our first strategy is always to see whether the current incumbent management is competent enough to run. And yes, they might have made some mistakes in the past, or might have not paid enough attention to the business. There could have been family fights, etc. But there is a little bit of benefit of doubt to be given, because they are the ones who built the business in the first place, and most probably run it successfully for some time before it ran into issues. But having said that, it is not that my only choice is the existing management and nothing else. We are always open to the idea, and the whole concept of IBC has come from there, that you have to push out the existing management stroke promoter and get a new guy to run the unit. So we are not averse to that idea, but there is a marked preference for allowing the existing guy to run and prove his bona fide in running the unit.
Pradeep ji, you want to add anything about?
Yeah, I already said that, as Sanjay said, that if they're bona fide and not willful and fraud, they should be given a second chance. That is what I would, that is the only thing I would like to say. That's all.
Avinash ji, your views upon it?
Yeah, I think you are talking about role of promoter with working in IBC, and IBC's ARC and ARC's role to work with the promoter. So all of us would generally believe and agree that it has to be revival promoter can do. That is the best way to do, because he has set up the unit and he knows about the unit much more than anything in the world. But some of the things which needs to be taken care, and probably what promoters necessarily should do, I would like to say two of those things which promoters will have to unlearn the things that they were doing before. In terms of earlier, running a business was not a very transparent thing. There are too many type of opportunities to do the different to do the business differently, and focus less on the core business and focus more on making money or saving money by one structure or the other. So that type of philosophy or mentality of doing the business which was prevailing earlier has to change. That is most important part. And somewhere promoter has to understand that the management and ownership is different. I think this is a very much cliched word which everybody says, but less implemented, and particularly in the developing countries and more particularly in India. So as long as promoters get these two type of things right, at least now, after when they have made mistake and they have come to ARC, probably there is nothing but no better solution than working in the
So Avinash ji, as an ARC do take care of bad money and try to get it realized in a stagnant manner or upfront basis. But how ARCs can take care of the new money requirement, which may be in the form of a capex or which may be in the form of working capital, which is being highly needed to revive the company as a whole?
I think there is no restriction on ARCs giving this funding, and ARCs are expected to give this funding. But for the simple reason that most of the ARCs were finding it difficult to raise money, or the second part is the cost of money which ARCs put into the business is much expensive than what working capital funding banks are giving. This is not being implemented very widely in this country. But there could be a number of cases, and I think Sanjay also would have come across many cases. My ARC is new, so I don't have any such case at this point in time. But Sanjay would definitely come across many cases.
Sanjay ji, your mic is off. Mic.
I think I got disconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there must be many cases where ARCs have put in money and tried to work out, completed the projects by giving additional funding, give working capital to revive the unit. Many ARCs I know in few cases, not all, so many cases, but couple of cases I know where ARCs have taken interest in actually hiring management team also in running the unit. So there is a role for ARC. I hope it gets implemented in larger cases as we go forward.
Sanjay ji, your views?
Yeah. So if I can just add to what Avinash has said, is when we look at a company for acquisition purposes, we also try to evaluate how much more money the company would need. Because me just buying the debt doesn't make sense unless the company has enough working capital to make sure that it can run to the optimum capacity. And there, our typical philosophy is that while we prefer to solve the problem of buying from bank, we want the promoter to bring the working capital himself. See, it's finally his company. The bank or the ARC is just a lender, and the real beneficiary, if the company turns around, will be the promoter stroke owner. And so they also need to show their bona fides, show their skin in the game by bringing in the required working capital. Having said that, in the past, we have done a few cases where we have given money to complete the project or given money for working capital purposes. But those were where, we had some other extraneous reasons to do it. But as of now, the philosophy is that please, the existing incumbent should bring in the working capital so that he also brings in new money, shows his bona fide for running the company.
Okay. Pradeep ji, your views, if you want to add anything?
Yeah, while I would support the views of Avinash and Sanjay that the promoter has to have, or the person who really owns it, we don't own it, we will remain lenders even after the account is acquired. So there has to be skin in the game from the promoters or the sponsors or the new management. While ARCs would like to mitigate the risk and not take exposure again and again, even for the working capital, they have enough exposure in the form of the acquisition value. At the same time, ARC's money being more expensive, there can be suppliers' money at a cheaper rate, or a bank supporting them can give a kind of a escrow account line of credit, depends on business to business. So that is a much cheaper option than ARC supporting in working capital. While I say this, I would like to add that prudent in the past, how we have functioned is that we are not a large ARC. We don't have kind of institutions supporting us for working capital. So what we have tried to do is play a unique role with the management, staying outside, not in the board, but staying outside as an advisory role for the revival of the units, how to run the units, what should be the right product lines, what should be the minimum and maximum scales of operations, what can be the profitability in different products, and how they should be managing things. So that's what we have done. And we have seen industries reviving with our outside management advisory support. I think that's the way we have played a very good role in another way to get the industries back.
Great. So, Pradeep, over to you only. This question is for academic purpose only for all the attendees and me. Whenever any account is being taken over by any ARC, so how ARC classify that account? Suppose if you get it restructured and all the milestones are being achieved over the years, so whether any classification as per the RBI guideline need to be adhered, that in standard account or non-standard account, or whether that ARC account can be taken over by any bank
See, RBI guidelines clearly say that the banks will tell us the accounts only with the minimum SMA2 category. SMA is a special mention account 2 category, after which account is termed as NPA. That is for the selling banks for us to buy them. And then for us to further rate them is on the basis of guideline. We rate them every 6 months after the resolution period. For us, thereafter, there is no categorization. At the same time, when we say that banks can buy them back, with my limited knowledge, normally we can have these accounts up to 8 years, after which we have to write off the SRs or write off the value of the accounts. And I have not seen any precedents till now in which the accounts which were sold 8 years back have been taken over back by the bank. Practically, I have not seen it implementing. Sanjay would know better than me because they've been there for the last 13 years, and if there is any precedence, and if he may like to add to this part of the regulatory rules.
So to answer the questions, the first thing is that ARC mostly acquires the account in a trust. So once it's acquired, it's restructured, there is no classification logic there. Classification is there only if the ARC acquires the loan in its own books, which hardly any ARC does.
Okay.
So that's point one. The point two is, yes, there is no RBI, there is a specific RBI guideline. No, there's no guideline, but I think if once a bank has sold an account to an ARC, it is not possible for that bank to again buy back that account. No. In the last 12 years of Phoenix, we have never done that. But what we have done and what we have seen it in several times is that a company which starts doing well, pays me as per the installment for 1 year, 2 years, then the companies have been able to get financing back from the banks. So they've been able to go to a bank or an NBFC and been able to get the ARC loan refinanced. So the advantage to the company is that one, the ARC tag gets removed. So the balance sheet no longer shows the name of Phoenix ARC, which, a lot of people, ARC name, people don't look at it in a very kind manner. And there is also a benefit of rate of interest, because the funding from a bank or NBFC would typically tend to be cheaper than the rate which an ARC would charge. So bank funding would most probably be available at 12-13% or so for an organization which has gone through an ARC route for 2 years and then restructure itself. So I've seen quite a few cases of that happening in my last 12 years. And I think that is the route which most of the cases, most of the companies which have gone through ARC, they aspire to also. So very recently in the month of March itself, we did a case where, we got an exit in one very large account. And there was a foreign FII which subscribed to debentures of the company, and that debentures helped the company to repay the debt. And in the process, the company benefited by almost about 4 to 5% of interest rate. So that's the advantage which is there. And that is also the exit route for a company. If you do well for a couple of years, are able to show sustainable cash flows and EBITDA.
Great. Avinash ji, over to you. What role financial advisors can play in resolution of stress assets in coordination with the ARC?
I think ARCs also use financial advisors many a times to resolve. So I think financial advisors, first of all, their role is to bring the right type of proposals to the investors. Now the investors could be many. They could be IF, they could be ARCs, they could be NBFCs or whatever. So all the ARCs, like 3 of us are today sitting here. All of us have different investment size and different mandate given to us for investing. So if advisor is aware that which ARC is working in which field and what type of deals will suit them, and bring the promoter to a right type of ARC, the matchmaking becomes much easier. Promoter will also be happy to meet the type of client and do that. Second is, I think quite often advisors should also have little bit of information on the sector. That helps them to have a very strong communication on both the sides, either from the promoter side or also from the investor side. And obviously advisors are quite often, I have seen, at least I have done a couple of transactions through advisors in this ARC and AI. They play a very big role as a negotiator, because our ask will be something, promoters ask will be something. If the advisor is able to appreciate both the sides correctly and put it in right manner, they definitely play a very important role as a negotiator. So obviously, advisors do have a very large role to play if they have right type of expertise and understanding of the overall market.
So, sir, what nature of transactions can be looked after by ARC, which can be put forward by the financial advisors to ARC?
So for us, we are more or less a turnaround fund. So obviously, we are prepared to put in much more money into the capital, but we'll need quite a lot of controls from the promoter to allow us to operate it independently, segregate the functions of ownership and management. So that's what we would like to do, and we would look forward to such. And this it is even if bank account is NPA and we have the list, unless promoter, I think we discussed this before, unless promoter is prepared to do the transaction, he is prepared to work with us in terms of resolving the asset in the manner which we want him to do. And it is not that we want to do him something which is detrimental to him or his company. Point is, quite often promoters are in the business for a very long time. They are well rooted into it and they are used to doing a business in a particular manner, which probably they have to change. So from our perspective, that is the main aspect in terms of what is the business and whether it can be turned around. And what, because quite often promoter also helps in bridging the gap between what we want to pay and what bank wants to sell it. So those type of roles are there for them. So if you have understood the entire mechanism, how ARC transaction happens, where does the money come from, and how does bank evaluate the assets in terms of arriving at a sale, then it will be a very useful aspect.
Sanjay ji, over to you if you want to add anything. Sanjay ji, am I audible to you?
Yes, yes. What I want to add here is that I've been in this business for the last 12 years, and 60 to 70% of my transactions comes through advisors stroke intermediaries. So the way we look at it is that advisors and intermediaries have a very important role to play. And the most important role that they have to play is that there are three participants in this business. There is an ARC, there is a company, there's a banker. All of them have different expectations of what should happen, how it should happen. And the bridging of their expectations is something what the advisors do. So, trying to move each one a little bit from their position. The first time a transaction comes to me, I say, oh no, I don't want to pay 100 crores for this. I'll pay only 70. You go to the bank will say, no, 100, I want 125 crores. And obviously, we will have different expectations on rate of interest, tenure, and all sorts of stuff. So advisors have a very important role to play in this business, in this sector. So that goes without saying.
Great. Pradeep ji, your views, you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to say that advisors are key to the resolution process and they play a very, very important role. One is that they are the physicians who the patient goes to in the first instance. So a physician examines the patient and educates the patient about the disease. After examining the patient and educating about the disease, takes him to the right specialist for the right kind of a treatment. And to the patient, yes, this is the right treatment for you. So for us, having the right advisor and consultants help us the problems in much easier way, headache free, and also in the right perspective, in the best interest of the promoter himself. Otherwise, most of the time promoters are double-minded, triple-minded. They don't know which direction to run. They run in all possible directions around them without reaching the conclusion, and they keep back running in circles. So getting us the right people, as Avinash rightly said, ARC of the right choice, matching the right ideology, that is the first role of the consultant, educating the promoter or the industry what is the best solution and guiding them the way forward is the best thing to do. While I say that, I would like to add that Prudent has a very particular way of dealing, like every ARC has. We prefer dealing in iron and steel. We prefer dealing in power, energy all over India, engineering. Cash flow based accounts, it could be road or any infrastructure or any account for Northern India. So if any consultant brings in those type of accounts to me, they know that Prudent is looking for these accounts and this is their sweet spot. So they are the best people for such type of accounts. So I think they play a very important role in all the manners that I just detailed.
So Pradeep ji, which type of industry we don't cater or we don't have an appetite? Can you name some?
See, which I don't, as I said that we like to look at all the industries and I have a portfolio which is divided into all type of industries, but certain industries which I am very, very careful about is the infrastructure sector. There is no collateral. I see a lot of litigation and I see a lot of companies doing litigation funding and this is something which I fail to understand what is there in that industry. So we are very careful with that. We are very careful with accounts which do not have collateral, but how the cash flow can be maintained and what is our security. I'm more comfortable in the sectors where I have worked as a promoter and entrepreneur. For example, iron and steel, pharmaceuticals, I would say real estate, then engineering, shipbreaking. So where I have back of the hand knowledge and understanding of the subject. So this is and north-based because there I can control geographically more than any other place all over the country. We are a small ARC with a team of about 32 people, so I cannot be omnipresent. I have to be to work in a very controlled way.
Great. So Avinashji, can you guide us with the sectors where you don't have much appetite in terms of acquisition of stress assets?
Yeah, so for us, basically size I mentioned to you, we will not invest less than 250 to 300 crores. Second important aspect, and I think this applies across the ARCs, and this should be the possible thing for everyone, is that basically we are giving debt as an ARC. We are buying the debt, so we are the debt holders. So unless there is adequate security, that doesn't work well for us. In a sense, suppose a EPC company, which has got a lot of facilities there and which does not have any underlying thing, then it doesn't work. So because there is no security for us, in case things don't go as per plan A, then we don't have plan B there. So we necessarily have some enforcement possibilities in terms of securities available, and if primary is not available, some other thing in terms of collateral. So that is second, and third is probably the cash flow, the certainty of cash flow, or how assured we are of the cash flows. So one example Mr. Pradeep pointed is very correct. That is a government contract and we just don't know when government will pay, then it actually can completely turn around our cards. So it doesn't work that way. So cash flow certainty and security, these are the two primary concerns besides the size of the asset which we are looking.
So in terms of sectors, you are agnostic?
Yeah, we are sector agnostic.
Okay.
We are sector agnostic fund. We are see, for me, ARC is a part of the fund. So therefore, our working is quite, we work together with the fund in order to resolve. So we have a team of around 60 people, which we try to work together and find a solution. So we are sector agnostic, but quite often what happens is wherever we have done deal in the past, that gives us some much more comfort and our responses are much more quicker. So we don't have to understand the sector right from there. So that is the thing. So if you ask me sweet spots or the sectors which we do is pharma, hospitals, steel, chemicals, those type of 4 or 5 sectors which are very attractive.
So how is your appetite in real estate?
Sorry?
How is your appetite in terms of real estate?
Real estate we are restricted because one of our promoter is Piravan. So therefore we have conflict with other partners.
Okay.
So wherever the real estate is there, we don't get in. Pure real estate play we don't.
Okay. Sanjay ji, yours intake?
So from our perspective, we are pretty sector agnostic, willing to look at any sector, any kind of transaction. But what we don't like is incomplete stuff. So for example, we are one of the few ARCs which looks at road projects also. But if the road is incomplete, it doesn't make sense to get it. Or for example, a real estate project which is incomplete, which requires more money, and there is a completion risk also, which comes because even if you have money, still the possibility of completion, there could be issues and ifs and buts around it. So we are sector agnostic, but we don't want to get into anything which has got incomplete stuff. And like Avinash said, there are two important factors which determine whether we buy or get into a borrower account is I should have security, I should have cash flows. I need to see visibility on both, and the amount of security cover we have, the amount of cash flow visibility, which is reflected in terms of your debt as a multiple of EBITDA. Those are the factors which are very important for us to look at. That, what kind of debt the company will carry vis-a-vis its current stroke projected EBITDA. And we typically tend to look at an exit in 3 to 5 years time. So any plan which at the start itself says that the exit will be only in 8 years time or 7 years time, that is also something which we tend to be very wary of, because our philosophy is the business should take an amount of debt today that is sustainable in or repayable in the next 4 to 5 years along with interest. So if the repayment schedule is going too much beyond that, then we might not be very happy about it.
Sanjay ji, how you are looking to resolve the installed real estate project with Swami Fund? I hope you have heard about Swami Fund being it's been looked after by SBI Cap.
Yes, I have heard about it, but I don't think now that Swami Fund creates an opportunity for ARC at all. The Swami Fund will give additional money, will close the deal. So there is no way for an ARC to be there in the transaction. Swami Fund is more helpful for banks because the banks which are already stuck in a project, so there they can take a funding from Swami Fund to complete the transaction, so that first the Swami Fund gets an exit and then the banks also can get money.
Yeah, so that is equally applicable for ARC also, I suppose.
So it's applicable for ARCs, but unfortunately, I don't have any old real estate project where which are incomplete in any manner. So we have been staying away from incomplete real estate projects for the last 3-4 years itself.
Okay.
So we have been only doing deals which are completed in every manner.
Pradeep sir, your intake, as you've been dealing with real estate sector?
Yes, we have been dealing, but in the accounts that I have not seen anybody going to Swami Fund for the support, though it was announced by the government. And possibly, I think it should be available. If you remember, some projects have been taken over by NBCC, for example, JP,
yes,
Amrpali Group. Personally, that those government companies who are trying to complete such projects will be more keen, and government will be more keen both ways, that to give them such funds to complete such projects rather than those projects which are the ARC or outside the ambit. This is my personal view. I don't know how far I am right or wrong.
Okay. So now we should see the Q&A session, and we should address the queries which have been posted by the attendees. So now the first query which came across to my mind after reading it, that how ARCs is going to cope up with a situation wherein the seller of the NPA account, that is bank and financial institutions, always assist on cash basis rather than SR basis acquisition process route. So Sanjay ji, if you can throw some light.
So I think the SR route or 1585, what it was called earlier, is now more or less not there in any case. So now most of the acquisitions are on a cash basis. So that is what last 2 years we have hardly done any SR related transactions. And some of the banks, while they've been selling at 50-50 or 75-25, but we typically don't prefer that at all, because if I have to buy at 75-25, pay 75% cash, then why keep the seller bank even for the 25%? It's better to pay 100% cash and maybe take some discount on the 75-25 pricing. So our preference nowadays is only for full cash deals, so that we control the entire debt. All the profit loss belongs to me and my investors, and that I'm not dependent on, not obliged to share anything with any other institution.
Avinash ji, your views?
No, we always do all cash transactions. So SR route was never taken up by us. And generally speaking, I think eventually SR may come back, looking at the size of the transactions. But so far, industry, like Sanjay said, has been doing all cash transactions. So we have done transactions worth about 400-500 crores also in full cash. So I think there is no much of a challenge there. Point is, when we buy all cash transaction, we are more keen on getting some sort of an exit and having a very clear resolution. Whereas if I am doing a SR transaction, then I can probably take some chance and try to resolve the asset with putting in little bit of money. Otherwise, I'll do only transactions where I have 100% surety or reasonably good surety that I'll be able to revive it and turn it around. And therefore, such transactions are less, and therefore the number of transactions in market are also less.
Pradeep sir, you want to add anything?
I think, as I said
No.
earlier in my statements, that I think SR is going to come back, and I'm trying to convince, and it is also in the best interest of all stakeholders, including bankers, and in the interest of the economy, to bring it back and share the burden, and not leave all the burden on the ARCs or the funds to throw in all the money, but everybody should share the risk and the rewards as well.
Sanjay ji, you want to add anything?
Yeah, what I wanted to just add is when you're doing a transaction and you have an investor, which is either a fund or some other investor, then in a way for the ARC, it does become a 1585 transaction. Like for example, when Avinash does a deal with his fund and fund invests 85, so the ARC is in fact invested 15% only. But yeah, the economic interest is all controlled by the ARC and its investors and nothing to do with the seller bank. So that's the difference.
So, sir, one more question I've come across. The question is, what about funding of ARCs? Whether RBI consider ARCs as NBFCs?
So I think funding of ARCs is a very gray area. So a lot of the banks don't want to fund an ARC at all. There are some banks which fund, but then they have also been funding very selectively, looking at the ARC and trying once you take a full call on their portfolio. Bank funding to ARCs is not easy. So I know a few banks whom we have spoken to, and they told us that we have a policy, board mandated policy, that we will not fund an ARC. So from our ARC association perspective, we have been trying to lobby with RBI to push the banks, not saying that the bank should fund ARCs, but at least you should not have a negative policy like this that you will not fund an ARC at all. Look at case by case and take a call. But there are challenges around it. I agree to that, which to some extent has restricted the growth of the ARC industry also. Okay. And that helps. That also makes the ARC more choosy. Which means if I have access to 500 crores, then obviously I would want to put that 500 crores in the best of the deals instead of going 1 or 2 notches below.
Adding to what Sanjay said, I wish ARCs were treated like NBFCs. And as Sanjay pointed out, the funding support, at least funding to milti hame, koi credit line to deta, koi restriction to nahi hoti. In fact, adding to what Sanjay just said, even if those ARCs jinko choti moti credit line mili bhi hui hai, RBI is so careful with those banks. Banks are trying to do a evergreen, possibly selling their accounts to the ARC in which they've given credit lines. So they have made a lot of hurdles and blocks for even those banks who has given credit lines to ARCs. So it is not easy for us, as it seems for everybody else.
Great, Pradeep. So my next question is, how ARC is going to cope up with the expectation in terms of valuation, pre-COVID and post-COVID situation?
So I can start by answering that, is that when we are now looking at transactions, there is an inherent assumption that it should be 15 to 20% cheaper than what we were looking at in the months of January, February, March, pre-COVID, before a transaction. Primarily because, most of the companies, as we discussed earlier, have been affected one way or the other. And we think that the recovery cycle could take anywhere between 6 months to 24 months. So which means the cash flows of those industries, all the industries, are going to be hit. And so the capability to pay is going to come down. And if the capability to pay has to come down, then from a EBITDA multiple perspective, the amount of debt that can be sustained is also low. So that is an inherent assumption which we are looking at for doing any transaction. But having said that, I don't think the sellers are looking at it from that perspective. Their expectation would still be the earlier number. So there will be some kind of a price mismatch for some time, at least in the first 6 months, once things open up, before one way or the other, either the seller moves or the ARCs realize that they were too negative. And so we might increase our expectation upwards.
Avinash, over to you. Any point you want to add?
Yeah, so basically the price which we offer, what is the expectation? Basically from ARC only in all cash transaction, there is no much expectation from ARC other than just paying higher price to the lenders. Other than that, what is the expectation from lenders? So that way there is nothing much other than pricing expectation from ARC. Post-COVID, now the price which anybody pays for that matter, including ARC, is a function of how much time I'll take to resolve the asset and bring back my money. That's all about. Now in COVID situation, because the time taken for resolution is going to be elongated by at least 6 months to 9 months, if not more, my pricing will be lower in the offer which we make. And at the same time, banks, if they appreciate it, and banks pricing is completely driven by some other considerations of book value and etc. etc. So those expectations are, I mean, the mismatch, at least in initial stages, will be much more difficult to meet anybody's expectation at this point.
Pradeepji, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just like to just say one line that acquisition that ARCs should be doing will be in a very cautious way, looking at the revival cycle and the cash flows. Hence, the valuations will be discounted industry to industry base for sure.
Pradeepji, this question is particularly for you, as being requested by one of the attendee, that how you are resolving or assisting with the borrowers for one-time settlement funding. Whether ARC can do one-time settlement funding?
Actually, when it simply means one-time settlement, I don't say, I would like to have the question rephrased, because one-time settlement is what we do, and we buy either on cash basis or on SR basis. So one-time settlement has a period, whether the borrower gives me that money in 1 month or a year. So we always do that kind of a deal.
No, my question is the borrower gets one-time settlement from the bank or financial institution. Now
one-time settlement, that is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, first we should look at the regulatory aspect. Once the one-time settlement has been done, then there is no bar from the Reserve Bank for having such funding to be done by ARCs, while many banks have policies for the ARCs to enter at the point when OTS has been done, and some banks do not have a policy. So those banks who have the policy of allowing the one-time settlement by assignment of debt through ARC, yes, we do it. Not only me, I'm sure all my peer group, all my friends do the same thing. And those who do not allow similar kind of transactions, they don't do it. So it's simply dependent on the banks, not actually on us.
Okay. The next question is from one of the credit rating agency. The question is, this RBI has mandated to do credit rating agencies to do credit rating work wherein 250 crores of exposure is there, more than 250 crores of exposure is there in the company. So whether as such type of opportunities are also available with companies which are being taken over by ARCs, whether any monitoring work can be assigned to the credit monitoring agencies being
asking me, let Sanjay, if you can answer this question, please.
Yeah.
So the companies whose debt we acquire, we do monitor those companies, and we do appoint agencies to monitor those companies. Except that our preference is more to appoint chartered accountant firms who will look at the cash flows, the inventories, the data, and those sort of stuff. More like an internal auditor to be appointed to do monitoring. Typically, we would not look at appointing credit rating agencies for those. But most of the times, what happens is when I have acquired a debt, and then the company wants to again go back to a banking system, then obviously they go to the credit rating agencies for getting a rating done for themselves. But in a scenario where an ARC owns the debt, most probably obtaining rating doesn't make sense. It will most probably be D only as a starting point. So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah.
Sudarshan, before you take another question, I may have to step
Last
out.
question, sir. Last question.
Yeah.
This is the last question which I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That question we have already covered in our dialogue. So I would like to thank our eminent speakers who took time from their busy schedule and enlightened us with their views and the queries which are not being answered, and if being skipped out in any way, then those attendees can post their queries to the mail ID, that is sudarshan.kedia@resurgentindia.com, and we will try our level best to get it answered accordingly. So thank you, eminent speakers. So we are going to conclude the webinar right now, and would like to thank each eminent speakers and the attendees who make this webinar a grand success.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sudarshan. Good to see you, Sanjay and Avinash.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudarshan, other panelists, and the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.